Welcome to my YouTube channel, my brother and sister. There are certain habits ingrained in the rhythms of our daily lives that we may not even be aware of, habits that slowly corrode the foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Disrespect is not a force that enters our lives from the outside, but a subtle echo of our own actions, our words and our attitudes. The truth is, we are all interconnected, all flowing through the same river of existence, and yet we often forget this, lost in our egos, in our need to be seen, in our desire to control. But to cultivate respect, we must first begin with awareness. Self-awareness is the foundation of all meaningful change in life. It is the quiet, often subtle recognition that we, as individuals, are not merely the thoughts, emotions, or actions we express, but something deeper, something that observes these things. Self-awareness is the ability to step outside of our automatic reactions, to see ourselves from a broader perspective. It is like stepping back from the canvas of our life and examining the strokes that we've made, the colors that have been used, and the patterns that have emerged. But in order to see clearly, we must first quiet the noise, the judgments, the labels, and the stories we tell ourselves. Only then can we understand who we truly are and how our behavior impacts the world around us. When we talk about self-awareness, we are not referring simply to an intellectual knowledge of who we are or what we think. It is far more profound. True self-awareness requires introspection, the willingness to look deeply into the self and reflect on the motivations behind our actions, the thoughts that we hold on to, and the beliefs that shape our reality. It requires honesty, the courage to face parts of ourselves that we may not like or may not even want to acknowledge. Self-awareness is not about judging ourselves, but about understanding the nature of our own experience. It is in the process of reflecting on these aspects of ourselves that we come to realize the patterns we perpetuate and the habits that limit our potential. Reflection is the companion to self-awareness. It is through reflection that we begin to connect the dots between our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. Reflection allows us to ask deeper questions. Why did I react that way? Why do I feel triggered by this particular situation? What beliefs or past experiences are informing my behavior? In this process of reflection, we begin to break free from the automatic responses that so often govern our lives. We start to see how much of what we do is driven by unconscious habits or past wounds that we are unaware of. Through honest reflection, we can begin to change not just our actions, but the underlying beliefs and patterns that created them. Self-awareness and reflection are not just practices for personal growth. They are necessary for understanding how we relate to others. It is through self-awareness that we come to understand the impact our actions have on those around us. We begin to see that the way we speak, the way we listen, the way we engage with the world is not merely about us. It is about how we interact with the flow of life, how we move with others in this shared existence. Through reflection, we begin to understand how our behaviors may unintentionally contribute to conflict, misunderstanding, or even disrespect. We begin to see that much of the tension we experience in our relationships is not about the other person, but about our own projections, fears, and judgments. Self-awareness and reflection allow us to live more consciously. They open the door to personal freedom as we break free from the habitual patterns that no longer serve us and step into a deeper understanding of who we are. This awareness does not make us perfect, but it allows us to be more present more intentional, and more compassionate in our interactions. It is in this awareness that we begin to see that we are not isolated beings, but part of a larger whole. We begin to understand that our actions ripple out into the world, affecting not only ourselves, but everyone around us. To cultivate self-awareness is to embrace the ongoing journey of understanding ourselves in a deeper way, without judgment or attachment, just as we are. It is the beginning of every meaningful relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the world. Self-awareness and reflection are the tools through which we can navigate life with clarity, compassion, and wisdom. Communication is the bridge between ourselves and the world around us. It is not simply the exchange of words, but the sharing of energy, intention, and understanding. Every time we communicate, we are offering a piece of ourselves, whether we are aware of it or not. But in our fast-paced, distracted world, communication often becomes thoughtless, reactive, and shallow. We speak without truly listening. We react without reflecting. And we convey messages that may not align with our true intentions. In this state, communication becomes a transaction rather than a meaningful exchange. Mindful communication is the antidote to this disconnection. Mindful communication is not just about the words we speak, but about the intention behind those words. It is the conscious awareness that every word we utter carries weight, carries energy, and can either create connection or foster division. When we communicate mindfully, we choose our words with care, ensuring they reflect our true feelings, our respect for the other person, and our intention to create understanding. But this is not always easy, because often our words are colored by our emotions, by our judgments, and by our assumptions. To communicate mindfully, we must first be aware of the emotional state we are in, the thoughts that are running through our minds, and the biases that we may be carrying. This self-awareness is the key to creating clarity in our communication. In mindful communication, we also recognize that listening is as important as speaking. True listening is an art. It is not merely waiting for our turn to speak, but fully receiving what the other person is expressing. It is the practice of being present, of giving the speaker our full attention, and of being open to their perspective, without judgment or interruption. When we listen with mindfulness, we are able to hear not just the words, but the feelings and intentions behind them. And we are able to understand the other person on a deeper level and to respond with empathy and compassion. Listening in this way becomes an act of respect, an acknowledgement that the other person's voice, their thoughts, and their experience matter. Moreover, mindful communication requires us to be aware of the non-verbal cues we give. Our body language, our facial expressions, and our tone of voice all convey messages that may contradict or reinforce the words we speak. Often, it is not the words that are most important, but the energy behind them. A warm, open tone can communicate acceptance, while a harsh, closed tone can convey judgment. A gesture of openness, such as maintaining eye contact or uncrossing our arms, can invite connection, while a closed posture can create distance. Mindful communication is the practice of being aware of all these subtle forms of expression and ensuring that our words, our tone, and our body language align with the message we wish to convey. When we engage in mindful communication, we also create space for honesty and vulnerability. Often, we communicate from a place of defense, from a place of protecting our ego, from a place of fear. We say what we think the other person wants to hear, or we withhold our true feelings to avoid confrontation. But this kind of communication leads to disconnection and misunderstanding. Mindful communication invites us to speak our truth, to express ourselves authentically, even when it is uncomfortable. It encourages us to be vulnerable, to show up as we are, without the masks or pretenses that we often wear. This level of openness creates a deeper connection with others, as it invites them to be open and authentic in return. Another key aspect of mindful communication is patience. We often rush through conversations, eager to get our point across or to move on to the next thing. But true communication requires patience, the willingness to be fully present in the moment, to listen without interrupting, and to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. It is the practice of allowing space for the other person to speak, to express themselves fully before we jump in with our own thoughts. This patience allows for a deeper exchange of ideas, a more meaningful connection, and a greater understanding between us. Finally, mindful communication invites us to be aware of the impact our words have. Communication is not just about speaking. It is about the energy we transmit and the effects we create in others. Every interaction, every exchange is an opportunity to either uplift or diminish. When we communicate mindfully, we seek to uplift. We choose words that encourage, that support, that bring clarity and understanding. We avoid words that harm, that create division, that perpetuate misunderstanding. By being mindful of the impact of our words, we begin to communicate with greater intention and responsibility. Mindful communication, then, is a practice of presence, intention, and respect. It is the recognition that our words and actions are not isolated, but are part of the greater web of connection we share with others. It is the acknowledgement that we are all in this together, moving through the world in a dance of exchange and relationship. To communicate mindfully is to honor that connection, to speak and listen with intention, and to be aware of the power we hold to either build bridges or create barriers. Through this practice, we transform not only our communication, but our relationships, creating a more compassionate, understanding world. Empathy and understanding are the threads that weave the fabric of meaningful human connection. Without them, we are left isolated in our own experiences, unable to truly meet each other in the shared space of life. In a world that often emphasizes individuality, competition, and separation, the ability to empathize with another person is both a radical and profound act. Empathy goes beyond mere sympathy or feeling sorry for someone. It is the act of truly feeling with them, of stepping outside of our own narrow experience and into the world of another, seeing life through their eyes. To practice empathy is to recognize that we are not alone in our struggles, our pain, or our joy. It is understanding that the experiences of others, even when they seem different from our own, are just as valid, just as real. This act of recognizing the humanity in others, of understanding their suffering, their fears, and their desires, allows us to move beyond judgment and to see the person as they truly are, rather than through the lens of our own biases or projections. Understanding, like empathy, requires a willingness to listen deeply, not just to the words being spoken, but to the emotions, the intentions, and the needs behind those words. It means tuning in not just to the surface conversation, but to the silent expressions, the body language, and the unspoken thoughts that guide the interaction. In order to truly understand someone, we must give them the space to be heard, to express themselves fully, without fear of judgment or dismissal. this kind of understanding is not about agreeing with the other person, but about accepting their experience as valid, acknowledging that their view of the world is shaped by a unique set of circumstances, experiences, and perceptions. Empathy and understanding also require patience. Patience to allow the other person to unfold their story, to take the time to connect with them on a deeper level. Often we rush through conversations, eager to jump to conclusions, to solve problems, or to give advice. But empathy teaches us that sometimes the greatest gift we can offer another is our presence, our willingness to simply listen and absorb. When we stop trying to fix or change others, we allow space for their own wisdom, for their own process of healing and growth. This is the power of understanding, not to change others, but to simply meet them where they are, with no expectation of what they should be or how they should act. When we engage with others from a place of empathy, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable as well. To empathize is to open ourselves up to the possibility of connection, to share in another's experience as if it were our own. It requires us to soften the walls we build around ourselves, to embrace the discomfort of truly feeling another person's pain or joy. This vulnerability is not weakness, but strength. It is the strength of the heart, the courage to open up to others, to truly experience the richness of human existence in all its beauty and suffering. Empathy also teaches us to hold space for others' emotions without imposing our own. Often we rush to offer solutions, to try to make someone feel better without first understanding what they truly need. But empathy reminds us that sometimes what another person needs most is simply to be seen, to be heard, and to be acknowledged. We do not need to fix or solve every problem. We only need to witness, to share in the experience, and to offer our understanding. In doing so, we create a safe environment for the other person to express themselves fully, without fear of judgment or rejection. Through empathy and understanding, we come to see that we are all interconnected. We are all shaped by our experiences, our histories, our emotions. To understand another person is not to diminish our own experience, but to expand our awareness of the richness of human life. It is to recognize that our own suffering, our own joys, are not isolated, but part of the greater human experience. Empathy allows us to transcend the boundaries that separate us, to create a shared space where we can come together in our humanity, without judgment or division. In a world that often encourages us to focus on our differences, empathy and understanding invite us to focus on our shared humanity. They call us to move beyond the surface level interactions and to truly connect with others on a deeper level. Through empathy, we come to understand that we are not alone in our experiences, and through understanding, we come to appreciate the complexity and beauty of each person we encounter. Together, empathy and understanding are the foundations of compassion, the gateway to a more connected, harmonious world. Listening in its purest form is an art that requires presence, patience, and an open heart. It is not the simple act of hearing words, but the deeper engagement with the entirety of another's being. Most often, we mistake hearing for listening. Hearing is a passive process, one that happens automatically. We hear the sounds around us, but we do not necessarily engage with them. Listening, however, is an active, intentional act. It requires us to engage not only with the words being spoken, but with the emotions, the intentions, and the deeper layers of meaning behind those words, To truly listen is to be present, fully immersed in the moment, with no distractions, no judgments, and no preconceived notions. When we listen, we must open ourselves to the other person's experience, to their world as they perceive it, without rushing to interpret or respond. This openness allows us to create space for the other person to express themselves fully, without the pressure of immediate reaction or correction. In this space, they can feel seen, heard, and valued. And it is in this space that true connection occurs. Listening is the bridge between two souls, a bridge that is built not with words, but with presence. The art of listening requires us to abandon the need to fix or solve the problems of others. Often we listen with the intention of offering advice, of providing solutions. While this may come from a place of care, it can also hinder true understanding. Sometimes the greatest gift we can offer another person is not a solution, but simply our full attention, our willingness to listen without judgment, to accept their experience as it is. By doing so, we acknowledge that their feelings, their thoughts, and their experience are valid, even if they differ from our own. Listening as an art also involves tuning into the unspoken. Words alone do not carry the full weight of meaning. Often, it is what is left unsaid, the silence between words, the tone of voice, the body language, that carries the most profound messages. To listen as an art is to pay attention to these subtleties, to sense the emotions beneath the surface. It is to understand that communication is not simply a matter of verbal exchange, but a dance of energy, of emotions, of intentions. By being attuned to these silent cues, we become more attuned to the heart of the message being conveyed. In listening, there is a deeper surrender to the flow of the conversation. We do not impose our own agendas, our own desires to be heard. We allow the other person to take the space they need, and we meet them where they are. This requires patience. The patience to sit in the silence. The patience to wait for the words to unfold naturally. Often, we rush to speak, to fill the space, to offer our opinions. But true listening requires us to let go of this impulse, to simply be present with the other, allowing their words to come forth without interruption. Furthermore, listening as an art demands that we listen to understand, not to respond. Often, in conversation, our minds are already formulating a response while the other person is still speaking. We are not fully engaged in what they're saying, but rather in what we are about to say next. This creates a disconnect. When we listen to respond, we miss the opportunity to truly understand the speaker's point of view. Listening as an art requires us to let go of our own need to speak, to let go of our ego, and to immerse ourselves fully in the other's experience. Only then can we offer a response that is grounded in true understanding rather than in reaction. The art of listening also asks us to cultivate empathy, to feel what the other person is feeling, to sense their emotions, their struggles, their joys, without judgment. It is to walk a mile in their shoes, to enter their world, and to see life through their eyes. In this act of empathy, we create a space for the other person to feel understood, and we begin to understand them in a way that transcends the limits of our own perspective. This kind of listening requires vulnerability. The vulnerability to be affected by another person's experience, to allow their feelings to touch our own hearts. Lastly, listening as an art involves the understanding that every person has their own unique story. We may have heard similar stories or experiences before, but each person's narrative is distinct, shaped by their own history, their own pain, and their own joy. In truly listening, we honor the uniqueness of their story and we acknowledge the depth of their humanity. By giving them the space to tell their story in their own words, we invite them to be seen and heard in a way that is profoundly healing. Through the art of listening, we celebrate the richness of human experience and create a space for genuine connection. Humility and arrogance are two opposing forces that shape how we interact with the world and others. Humility, in its essence, is the recognition of our own limitations, our vulnerabilities, and the understanding that we are not the center of the universe. It is the awareness that despite our achievements or abilities, we are constantly evolving and growing. Humility invites us to approach life with an openness, a curiosity, and a willingness to learn, knowing that there is always something new to discover, always room to improve. It is not about diminishing ourselves, but about embracing our place in the grand tapestry of existence, a small yet significant thread within a much larger whole. Arrogance, on the other hand, is a false sense of superiority that often arises from insecurity. It is the need to assert control, to prove one's worth, or to elevate oneself above others. Arrogance thrives on the illusion of perfection, on the belief that we know all there is to know, that our perspective is the only valid one. It blinds us to the wisdom of others, to the richness of life beyond our narrow vision. When we act out of arrogance, we build walls around ourselves, isolating us from deeper connections, from the lessons that others can teach us. Arrogance may seem powerful on the surface, but it is hollow and fragile, masking an underlying fear of inadequacy. Humility, in contrast, does not demand recognition or praise. It is not concerned with being seen as superior or better than others. Rather, it is rooted in the understanding that we are all equal, that our experiences, though different, are all valuable and interconnected. Humility recognizes the inherent worth in every person and honors the uniqueness of each individual. It is the quality that allows us to approach others with respect, to listen with openness, and to accept that there is always something we can learn from those around us. Humility frees us from the burden of ego and the need to prove ourselves. It allows us to simply be, to exist in the present moment, and to fully experience the richness of life without the pressure of comparison or judgment. Arrogance, conversely, thrives on comparison. It seeks to measure and rank, to place people in categories of better and worse. This creates division and disconnection. When we live in a state of arrogance, we constantly compare ourselves to others, always trying to one-up them, to be more than them. We view the world as a competition, where the goal is to come out on top. But this mentality leads only to emptiness, as the external validation we seek is fleeting and ultimately unsatisfying. Arrogance confines us to a limited view of reality, preventing us from seeing the beauty in the diversity of experiences that surround us. True humility is not passive or meek. It is a quiet strength. It requires courage, the courage to acknowledge that we do not have all the answers, that we are, in fact, imperfect beings navigating the complexity of life. Humility asks us to be vulnerable, to admit when we do not know, to ask for help, and to embrace the uncertainty that comes with being human. In doing so, we open ourselves to growth and transformation. Humility allows us to embrace failure as part of the learning process, understanding that mistakes are not signs of weakness, but opportunities to deepen our understanding. Arrogance, on the other hand, prevents growth because it is rooted in the fear of being wrong. The arrogant person is afraid of appearing weak or inadequate, so they avoid admitting mistakes, avoiding the vulnerability that comes with being imperfect. This fear traps them in a cycle of defensiveness, making it difficult for them to learn from others or to grow. Arrogance keeps us stuck in our own limited perspective, while humility opens us up to the vastness of knowledge and experience that exist beyond our own ego. Humility fosters empathy. When we approach others with humility, we are more likely to see the world from their perspective, to appreciate the challenges they face, and to offer support and understanding without judgment. Humility invites us to recognize the shared human experience in others, to see that we are all doing the best we can with the circumstances we are given. Arrogance, however, creates distance. It causes us to view others as inferior or as objects to be controlled, rather than as equals, deserving of respect and dignity. The arrogant person often struggles to relate to others because they are too focused on themselves and their own perceived superiority. The practice of humility also invites us to let go of the need for validation. It frees us from the constant desire for external recognition and approval. Instead of seeking praise, the humble person focuses on the intrinsic value of their actions. They do what they do not for the sake of recognition, but because it is the right thing to do. They find fulfillment in the process, not in the outcome. Humility teaches us to find contentment within ourselves, independent of the accolades of others. Holyrestre, how are you? When we embrace humility over arrogance, we create space for genuine connection, for deeper understanding, and for true personal growth. We see ourselves and others with clarity, free from the distortions of ego and comparison. In this state, we are more likely to build relationships based on mutual respect, compassion, and shared humanity. Humility allows us to approach life with a sense of wonder, knowing that there is always more to learn, always more to experience, and always more to give. Some arrogance, on the other hand, limits us, keeps us small, and prevents us from fully embracing the beauty and complexity of life. Through humility, we discover that the greatest strength lies not in our ability to dominate or control, but in our ability to surrender, to listen, and to connect with others in a spirit of mutual respect and understanding. In the grand dance of life, humility is the silent force that connects us to the world, to others, and to our deeper selves. It teaches us to listen with an open heart, to understand without judgment, and to grow from each experience. Humility frees us from the chains of comparison, ego, and arrogance, allowing us to see the beauty and diversity and the inherent worth in all people. By embracing humility, we open the doors to true connection and understanding. It enables us to meet life's challenges with grace and vulnerability, knowing that we are part of a larger, interconnected whole. Arrogance, on the other hand, builds walls that isolate and divide us, stifling growth and deeper understanding. Ultimately, by choosing humility over arrogance, we choose peace, empathy, and the ongoing journey of personal evolution, creating a more compassionate world for ourselves and others.